He never meant to fall for her, his friend's older sister, the woman who carried silence like perfume and smiled like she'd already lived 100 heartbreaks. One evening, a single line changed everything. "Don't pretend you don't want me here." And when he answered, "I stopped pretending a long time ago," either of them could turn back. What began as hesitation grew into something forbidden, fragile, and impossibly real, a slow-burning connection they couldn't hide or deny. This isn't just a story about desire, it's about two people finding what they both stopped believing in, being truly seen. I didn't plan to see her that night. In fact, I told myself I wouldn't. But when my friend asked me to drop off the books he'd borrowed, I found myself standing outside her house instead, the porch light dim, the air thick with the kind of quiet that makes you hesitate before knocking. I should have left them by the door. Instead, I rang the bell. The door opened slower than I expected. And there she was, Elena, my friend's older sister. The one who never quite looked at anyone long enough to give them permission to look back. Tonight, though, her eyes stayed on me. She wasn't dressed for guests, a loose sweater slipping off one shoulder, her hair tied back without care. But that unguardedness made her seem almost younger. Or maybe it just made me forget the years between us. "Books?" she said softly, noticing the stack in my hands. I nodded, not trusting my voice. "Come in, then. It's cold." The house smelled faintly of coffee and rain, windows open, curtains moving in a slow rhythm with the wind. I followed her to the kitchen, trying not to notice how her bare feet crossed the tiles, how she never asked why I came instead of her brother. She poured 2 mugs, even though I hadn't said a word. The sound of the coffee machine filled the silence between us. Her movements were careful, almost rehearsed, as if she needed something to do with her hands. When she finally looked up, she smiled a little. "You've grown quiet," she said. "I was just thinking," I managed. "About what?" I hesitated. "You." She didn't look surprised. Just tired. Or maybe relieved. The words hung there, heavy and simple, between the hum of the kitchen light and the small clink of her spoon against the mug. "Don't pretend you don't want me here," she said suddenly, not as a tease, but as a dare, her voice low and almost trembling. And before I could think, before I could protect the space between us, I said it. "I stopped pretending a long time ago." She froze, her hand halfway to the counter, then turned toward me. For a second, she didn't blink. It wasn't the kind of silence you could fill. It was the kind that watched you, that asked if you were sure. She stepped closer, not touching, but close enough that I could feel the warmth coming off her skin. Her perfume wasn't sweet. It was faint, like the trace of something remembered. "Then why are you still standing there?" she asked quietly. I didn't know. Maybe I was afraid she'd change her mind if I moved. Maybe I wanted her to make the next mistake first. Her hand brushed past mine as she reached for her mug, and that was all it took, one accidental touch that didn't feel accidental at all. Her breath caught, barely, and I realized she'd felt it too. For a moment, everything around us slowed, the sound of rain outside, the distant hum of traffic, even the pulse in my throat. Then came the soft creak of the front door, a noise that shouldn't have mattered but did. She drew back, her expression unreadable. "Your brother," she whispered. "He must have forgotten his keys." And just like that, the air between us shifted again, still burning, but quieter, like a secret forced back into silence. I didn't see her again for 3 weeks. At least, not in person. But she kept appearing, in the way someone says your name too softly on the phone, in the shadow of a voice that lingers after you hang up. When she finally called, her tone was practical. "Can you help me move a few boxes? My back isn't what it used to be." I said yes before she finished the sentence. The afternoon was overcast, the kind of gray that makes everything feel half-dreamed. I found her in the living room, sleeves rolled up, her hair pinned loosely as if she'd given up trying to make it stay. "Thanks for coming," she said, handing me a box that wasn't heavy enough to need help. "It's fine," I replied, setting it down just to have something to do with my hands. She laughed, a small, restrained sound, and sat on the edge of the couch. You always look like you're about to say something important. Maybe I am. Then say it. I didn't. Instead, I asked about the framed photographs on her shelf, a polite distraction. That's my ex-husband, she said, pointing to one. We were married 12 years. He liked order. I liked quiet. Turns out they're not the same thing. There was no bitterness in her voice, just a kind of weary truth. And you? She asked. Anyone waiting for you to grow up yet? I shook my head. No one sticks around long enough. She smiled faintly. Maybe you don't let them. The words hit harder than they should have. She wasn't wrong. As we worked, our movements kept colliding, her hand brushing against mine as we lifted a box, her shoulder grazing my arm when she leaned over to reach something. None of it was planned. None of it felt innocent either. Once she steadied herself by touching my wrist, just a moment, light as breath, but I felt it long after she let go. You shouldn't look at me like that, she murmured, eyes fixed on the open window. Like what? Like you're still deciding whether this is wrong. I wanted to answer, but she stepped closer, and the question became impossible. The scent of her, faint vanilla, coffee, and something softer, made it hard to think of anything except distance, or the lack of it. For a long second, she didn't move. Then she reached up, brushed a strand of hair from my forehead, a simple, motherly gesture that didn't feel simple at all, and whispered, You remind me what it's like to be noticed. Her fingers lingered there, just long enough to make breathing feel optional. Neither of us spoke again. We just stood in that dim living room, surrounded by half-open boxes and the echo of things better left unsaid, both knowing the moment had changed something we couldn't undo. When I finally stepped back, she didn't stop me. But she didn't look away either. And that silence, that almost, felt more dangerous than anything she could have said. It happened on a Thursday, the kind of quiet weekday that shouldn't have meant anything. My friend had asked me to drop off a charger he'd left at his sister's house. Again. I told myself it was just an errand. I think she told herself the same. When she opened the door this time, she didn't look surprised. Just wary, like she'd been waiting but didn't want to admit it. You, she said softly. I thought you'd stopped pretending to have reasons to come here. I smiled. Maybe I did. Inside, the air felt heavier than before. Curtains drawn, the faint sound of rain tapping the window. She'd been painting. A half-finished canvas leaned against the wall, streaks of blue and gray bleeding together like weather caught mid-thought. You paint? I asked. Not well, she said, brushing her palms on her jeans. But it keeps me from thinking too much. She stood close enough that I could see a streak of color on her cheek. I reached out without meaning to, wiped it with my thumb. Her breath caught. That's messy, I said, trying to keep it light. Her voice barely rose above a whisper. So are you. The silence that followed wasn't comfortable. It pressed in, thick and alive. Every second felt like a decision neither of us knew how to make. Then came the sound, a door latch turning. We froze. She stepped back fast, almost knocking over the coffee cup on the table. I turned toward the hall just as my friend's voice called out. Elena? You home? My pulse went wild. She pressed a finger to her lips, motioning for silence. Her other hand brushed against mine, not deliberate, just desperate. But it grounded me, held me still. In here, she called out, her voice steady but low. He poked his head into the room, smiling at the sight of me. Hey, man. You found the charger? Yeah, I said, my throat dry. Just dropped it off. He turned to her. You good? She nodded. Fine. Just cleaning up. He left as quickly as he came, humming something under his breath, unaware of the electricity crackling behind him. The doors shut again, and everything that had been held back came rushing in, the air, the tension, the silence that wasn't silence anymore. Her shoulders sank. You shouldn't keep coming here, she said quietly. I know. Then why? Because every time I don't, it feels worse. Her eyes softened, though her mouth stayed firm. They'd never understand. I don't need them to. She took a step forward, then stopped, caught between sense and something heavier. You're too young to say things like that, she murmured. And you're too beautiful to pretend you don't hear them. For a second, everything tilted, the room, the air, us. Her hand lifted toward me, hovered near my face, then dropped. We didn't kiss. We didn't even move. But she stayed close enough that I could feel her heartbeat through the stillness. And in that fragile distance, where nothing happened and everything almost did, we both knew something had already broken. The next time I saw her, she was standing by the window, arms folded, looking out at nothing. Evening light poured in behind her, soft and gold, turning the edges of her hair into fire. She didn't turn when I entered. You shouldn't be here, she said. I know. Then why come back? I hesitated. Because I don't know how not to. She exhaled, slow, measured, the kind of breath people take before they lie to themselves. You think this is simple. You're young. You think wanting something is enough reason to have it. Her voice was calm, but her hands trembled when she reached for the glass on the table. I caught it before it slipped. Our fingers brushed, a tiny electric collision that made the air shift. It's not about wanting, I said quietly. It's about not being able to stop. She finally turned toward me. There was something raw in her eyes, not anger, not fear, just exhaustion from holding herself together for too long. Don't say things like that, she whispered. Why not? Because you mean them. We were too close now, her perfume faint and familiar, her pulse visible just below her collarbone. She stepped back, but the wall stopped her. I didn't move forward, but somehow the distance disappeared anyway. I've tried to ignore it, she said, her voice shaking. Every time you leave, I tell myself it was just in my head. But then you come back and… She broke off, eyes closing for a second, as if gathering what little control she had left. And? I prompted softly. Her hand lifted, half-heartedly pushing against my chest, but didn't follow through. Instead, her fingers stayed there, feeling the rhythm of my heartbeat like it was betraying both of us. This isn't right, she said. Then tell me to stop. Silence. The kind of silence where truth lives, heavy, trembling, inevitable. She looked up at me, her lips parting as if to speak, but nothing came. Her eyes darted between my mouth and my eyes, and for a heartbeat, I thought she'd made her choice. Then she said it, not loud, not angry, just real. I'm scared of what you make me remember. I swallowed. And what's that? She smiled, a sad, fragile thing. That I can still feel like this. Her hand moved, brushing my cheek, a slow, deliberate gesture that said everything we hadn't dared to. My own hand found her wrist, not pulling, just holding, anchoring. Say something, she breathed. But I couldn't. Words would have ruined it. The warmth of her skin, the soft edge of her breath, the almost of it all. Then a sound broke through, a phone vibrating on the table, screen lighting up with her brother's name. Her eyes widened. The moment fractured. Neither of us moved, the phone buzzing again between us like a warning. And before she reached for it, before reality came rushing back, I whispered the truth neither of us could take back. I don't care who calls. Her hand stopped midair. The silence after that felt like the edge of a cliff. The phone stopped buzzing, but the sound lingered between us like a held breath. She didn't answer it. Instead, she turned the screen face down and pressed her palms to the table, as if grounding herself in the simplest thing she could still control. Elena! I started, but she cut me off. You shouldn't have said that, she whispered. You don't understand what it means. I stepped closer, careful, slow. Then tell me. Her eyes flicked toward me, sharp and frightened all at once. He knows, she said. Your friend. He saw us last week, when you helped me move the boxes. He didn't say anything, but he knows. The words hit like a sudden drop. I took a step back. He didn't say no, she said. But his silence said enough. The air felt colder now, though the window was still closed. The faint smell of her perfume clung to the room, warm, familiar, suddenly dangerous. "I thought," she began, but her voice cracked. "I thought I could keep this contained. You'd come over, we'd talk, and I'd pretend it was harmless. That it was just friendship?" I asked. Her eyes softened, but she didn't answer. Instead, she pressed a hand to her forehead, like she was fighting something heavier than guilt. "You don't understand what it costs me to be near you," she said. "I think I do." "No, you don't," she snapped, her voice trembling. "You can still walk away. You still get to be young and careless. I don't." She moved toward the sink, away from me, but the small space made every step feel intimate. When she turned, her shoulder brushed mine, not a touch meant to comfort or invite, but something rawer, like static that refused to fade. I wanted to reach for her, to hold her still. But she looked up before I could move, and her expression stopped me, wide-eyed, vulnerable, almost pleading. "I lied," she said suddenly. The words froze me. "I told myself it was nothing, that it was just attention. That I liked being seen again." She swallowed hard. "But it isn't that. It hasn't been that for a long time." She stepped closer, close enough that I could feel her heartbeat in the space between us. "You think I'm strong, but I'm not. I've just learned to hide it better." Her voice dropped lower, rough around the edges. "And if your brother, if anyone, finds out what I've let happen here—" She stopped, her hand finding my arm without meaning to, her thumb grazing skin. I said quietly, "Then it'll be my secret to keep." Her eyes searched mine, as if trying to decide whether to believe me. For a moment, the tension shifted, no longer about fear, but inevitability. Then she whispered, "Leave before I make this worse." I didn't move. Neither did she. The silence stretched, trembling, the air pulsing with what neither of us could undo. And when I finally turned toward the door, her voice followed, low, cracked, and final. "Next time you come here, don't knock." The next evening, I didn't wait for an invitation. I didn't knock. The rain had started again, softer this time, as if even the weather had learned to whisper. Her house was dimly lit, the kind of light that forgives everything it touches. She stood by the doorway when I entered, no surprise in her eyes, only the quiet acceptance of someone who'd stopped pretending to be strong. "You shouldn't be here," she said again, but her voice was thinner now, a plea without conviction. "I know." "Then why?" "Because you told me not to knock." That broke something. Not loudly, just the soft, invisible kind of breaking that changes everything. She turned away, pressing her palms against the edge of the counter, as if distance could still protect her. "You don't know what you're asking for," she murmured. "I'm not asking," I said. "I'm here." Her breath caught. I moved closer, slow enough for her to stop me, fast enough for her not to think. When I reached her, I didn't touch her. Not yet. She looked up, and in that half-light she seemed both older and impossibly young, every wall she'd built trembling at its base. "I've spent years trying to feel less," she said. "With you, it's like learning how to breathe again. And it terrifies me." Her confession hung between us like static, alive, dangerous, undeniable. I stepped closer. "Then be terrified with me." Her hand rose, hesitant, finding the edge of my jacket, fingertips clutching fabric like it was safer than skin. My pulse thrummed beneath her touch. "This isn't fair," she whispered. "No," I said. "But it's real." The space between us vanished, not in a rush, but in a slow collapse. Her forehead leaned into mine, breath mingling, trembling. Her lips brushed the air near my cheek, not quite touching. We stayed there, suspended in a moment that didn't belong to rules or reason, just two people who had run out of ways to pretend. Her voice broke the stillness. "If we cross this line, there's no taking it back. I don't want to." She exhaled, shaky, surrendering to something neither of us could name. Her hand came up, tracing the side of my face, stopping at my jaw. The warmth of her palm felt like an answer, fragile, trembling but honest. Then, just before the inevitable, she said, "You'll hate me for this someday." "I don't think I can," I whispered. Her eyes closed. The rain outside grew heavier. And in that sound, that rhythm of falling things, we finally stopped fighting what had already happened long before tonight. No one kissed. No one spoke. But everything that needed to be said was already between our breaths, between the inches we'd finally erased. When she opened her eyes again, there was no fear left, only the quiet understanding of two people who had seen each other completely. Whatever came next, it wouldn't be a secret anymore. Morning came quietly, as if the world had agreed to keep our secret for a little longer. The rain had stopped, but its scent lingered, damp earth, cold air, and the faint warmth of coffee drifting from the kitchen. Elena sat by the window wrapped in a light sweater, her knees pulled up, watching the sun try to break through the gray. Her hair was still slightly tousled, her face calm in a way I hadn't seen before, like someone who'd finally stopped running from herself. I stood behind her, unsure if I should speak. The night felt both close and far away, something too delicate to name, too real to deny. "You're quiet," she said without turning. "I'm just trying to remember everything," I said. She smiled faintly. "You don't have to." I moved closer, the floor creaking softly under my steps. She didn't pull away when I sat beside her. Our shoulders brushed, a small point of warmth that felt steadier than words. "I thought it would feel wrong this morning," she murmured. "It doesn't." Her fingers played with the edge of her sleeve, a nervous habit I'd noticed long ago. I reached out, still unsure if I had the right to, and took her hand. She let me. For a long while, we didn't speak. The light grew stronger, filling the room with a soft glow that caught the dust in the air. It felt like time had slowed down just enough for us to breathe in the same rhythm. "I used to think I'd miss my chance," she said quietly. "At something that mattered." "You didn't," I said. "You just found it later." She turned toward me, studying my face the way people look at something they know they'll remember. "You make it sound simple." "Maybe it is," I said. "We just complicate what we want." Her thumb brushed against my hand, slow, deliberate. Then she leaned in, resting her forehead against mine, her breath warm and steady. "I don't know where this goes," she whispered. "Neither do I. But you're still here. I'm not going anywhere." She laughed softly, the sound fragile but real. "You always say things like that." "Because I mean them." She leaned closer, pressing her lips to my forehead, not a kiss that asked for anything, just one that promised honesty. It was the simplest, most human kind of touch, the kind that says "I see you." When she pulled back, her eyes glimmered, not from sadness, but from the quiet certainty of two people who had stopped pretending. Outside, the sky had cleared. The light finally broke through, landing across her face. She looked younger in it. Or maybe just lighter. I squeezed her hand once more, and she didn't let go. For the first time, it didn't feel like we were breaking a rule. It felt like we were finally done hiding from what had already found us.